Welcome. You're listening to This Leader, the podcast. If you lead people and are seeking the transformational, high-impact secrets that will lead to greater joy and fulfillment in your work, will optimize your team performance, and will help you create a happy, highly productive workplace, then you are this leader and you're in the right place. I'm your host, Claire Laughlin, and each week my guests and I will explore the mindsets, techniques, and actionable strategies that will help you build the career, team, and organization of your dreams. Because I believe no one should have to suffer in a dysfunctional workplace. Let's get started. Hi there. Hey, it seems like there's never a good time to go on vacation, right? Like the end of the year is full of holidays and summer is full of tourists and the spring might be your busy season. Fall can have really unpredictable weather. There's always a reason that it's a little inconvenient to be gone for a length of time. A long weekend, it's good enough, we tell ourselves, or I'll just have a staycation, we say, and those are good. But when my kids were little and I was seriously burned out from working long hours and trying to do too much, I decided to try something really different. I took a bold step and I booked a 3-week vacation for me, my husband, and my kids. I know it's luxurious, it's special, and I'm thankful that my husband and I both have our own businesses, and we decided to make, the necessary trade-offs. And further, we decided to go somewhere with little to no cell service where, particularly me, I would be forced to slow down and unplug. And this was a life-changing decision. We opted for 3 weeks in the mountains, 3 weeks off the grid, and 3 weeks to breathe and rest, and for me to just let my mind wander. It was a game changer, and it led to an ongoing commitment for us to take big adventures and to take that full 3 weeks off at least every other year. So now we're preparing for our next big trip, and I want to talk about all the good things that happen when you plan, delegate, and then depart. Let's start with that first step, plan. Planning a trip of any significant length means you need to wrap up loose ends. For me, it means getting through that endless stack of papers that piles up in my office. And it means combing through my notebooks for outstanding to-dos and deciding over and over again, is this still relevant or does this need to be done? I evaluate each item and I think, okay, not that important. All right, dump it, right? Needs to be done by me? Do it. Get it done. Needs to be done by someone, but I don't have to do it? Delegate. This process forces me to get real about what matters and what doesn't. It's like a spring cleaning for my workload, and it feels so good. So I want to share exactly how I do this because I found that a lot of leaders get stuck right here. I use what I sort of sometimes call the island test. Like as I look at each task, usually I'm going to an island anyway, but I ask myself, hey, if I were stranded on a deserted island for 3 weeks, what would be the real consequence of not getting this done? That's what happens at the very end of my planning process when the urgency really starts to build. You'd be amazed at how many things suddenly become much less urgent when you apply this one filter. And I've learned this the hard way, time and time again. Like one time I was preparing for a trip and I was putting so much pressure on myself to revise this report. And I just had it in my mind that this revision absolutely had to be done. But when I really examined it, I realized the report itself wasn't even part of my existing scope of work. So I decided to wait until my return. And after my trip, I checked in with my client and they said they didn't see any need for it at all. Not even the first version, much less the revision. So now I double check my to-do list to see what's really necessary versus what I've simply added to my own mental load. So, and another tool I use is what's called the Delegation Matrix for me. And here's how it works. Like you just grab a piece of paper and, draw a cross on it so it makes 4 quadrants. And you can label those. Like one is only me and another is, training needed. Another one is ready now. And the final one is not important. And then you take every task and you kind of sort it into one of these quadrants. Like you can do this mentally. You don't really need to do it on a piece of paper, but some of us are still paper and pencil type of people. And that quadrant, only me, these are things that only you can do, right? Maybe signing off on something, some major decisions or handling some confidential or personnel matter. Those things really only you can do. You can't delegate that. So you got to complete that before you go. You got to get that on your list. The training needed quadrant are things that someone else could do, but they need some coaching for it or they need some upskilling. So these mostly represent future delegation opportunities, but they remind me that I should really start preparing to hand these off before my next trip, or soon after I get back. The ready now quadrant, those are the gold mines. Those are the tasks that someone on your team can really already handle. Like, I can give this over. Somebody is ready now to take that. And these are things that should be delegated before you go. And then finally, the not important quadrant. Well, we all have this tendency to sort of stack up things that don't actually have to be done. The scope of our jobs really just sort of expands. See if that's true for you. It's true for so many leaders. And so that not important quadrant can actually serve us because it can help us identify things we shouldn't probably even be doing. They don't contribute to our most important outcomes, and those should be deleted, dumped, right? So somehow having a real trip planned makes these activities a lot easier for me. I've tried doing this sort of falsely at times when I'm not physically leaving or flying away, but it never feels quite as complete. So maybe for you, it would work if you didn't really have a trip planned. But for me, I know that this is really quite easy for me when I am actually leaving for a period of time. So I hope you'll try that one. Now, for step 2, delegate. We just talked a little bit about preparing to delegate or planning to delegate, but and I know, if I'm going to be gone, someone needs to be in charge. As a person who has a hard time asking for help, I find this very good practice. I have extremely competent people around me, and sometimes I don't hand off enough responsibility. And if you're truly going to check out, you need to invite people into your inner circle and hand them the reins. And so I highly recommend this for any of you out there who are accustomed to flying solo or for those who like to keep everything really close to the vest. And when you delegate, think about it. Will mistakes happen? Yeah, sometimes. Will things get dropped? Now and then, for sure. And will it really matter in the long run? My experience? Mostly not. When you take the time to delegate really well and then you unplug, you find that the people around you can handle a lot. And there's a lot of little things that really aren't as crucial as you believed. I just try to remind myself, no, Claire, the universe does not revolve around you, and that's just fine. So delegation, proper delegation is certainly not dumping your work on someone else. It's about thoughtful transition of responsibility and authority. You want to be sure to give people the context that they need, connect them with resources, and then crucially, get out of the way. So I want to tell you a little story about one of my clients. She was an executive who thought she was great at delegating. And the way she would do it is she'd hand tasks to her team with very detailed instructions. Like, here's exactly how to do this, step by step. But then she'd kind of hover and check in multiple times a day. And ultimately, she often would take the work back to ensure it was done exactly the way she wanted. Does that sound familiar? Well, one day, this client had a family emergency and she had to leave unexpectedly for a full week. She had no time to prepare, no chance to micromanage. And guess what? Her team not only stepped up and handled everything, they solved a really major problem in her absence. And that was a really good lesson for her. She really saw that they were very capable. So when you're delegating, you want to define the destination and then let people get there in their own way. So here's a couple of tips. First, transfer the why, not just the what. Okay. So instead of saying, like, send this report to the board by Friday, try adding the why. Like, hey, the board needs this information to make a crucial decision at their Monday meeting and they've requested it in advance. And then you could ask, can you send it by Friday or can you send it before Friday or something like that? Okay. Then second, again, define the destination instead of giving instructions. Rather than say, follow these 12 steps exactly, try, here are 3 sort of non-negotiables that need to be included. Beyond that, use your judgment. Identify for yourself if there are things that are really non-negotiable about this and definitely talk about those. But beyond that, let them use their judgment. Third, create safety for different approaches. the magic words here are, your approach might look different from mine, and that's okay as long as we achieve the desired outcome, something like that. So just make sure you let them know that doing it their way is okay. And just remember, proper delegation doesn't mean that you're creating clones of yourself. Instead, you're developing leaders who can think independently and grow into greater levels of responsibility. Okay, so now you've done some planning, you've really been thoughtful about your delegation, and it's time to depart. By the time you hear this, I'll be in Southeast Asia, immersing myself in the amazing food and the culture of Vietnam. I've heard it's absolutely amazing, and I can't wait to get there. It's really been a dream since I visited that region several decades ago. I've got a journal packed, I've got a good fiction novel, and it's time for me to let my mind unwind. To depart, for me, is to really surround myself with space and time. When I truly unplug, I become far more creative and I'm able to make connections that often emerge into whatever my next big thing is. And even though it's hard to plan for being away, even for 3 weeks, I know it's not that long, but it's a chunk of time. I know that it's truly necessary for me so I can contribute at my highest level over time. Because the magic really happens when you truly disconnect. And it means no checking email and replying to things that other people can handle. No quick text messages to the team or to jump in on conversations. And no mental rehearsal of work challenges while you really should be present elsewhere. When you create this space, your brain can actually rest. And in that rest, new neural pathways form and new ideas emerge. Your entire perspective shifts. I've had some of my biggest breakthroughs about my business, my leadership approach, and even my life purpose during these periods of true disconnection. So let me share what I mean. A couple of years ago, while I was on one of my trips, I had a total revelation. And I was just out hiking. I was just out hiking. I wasn't thinking about work. But I realized that I had been focusing so much on keeping specific aspects of my business going, like in a certain way that they had been going, that I had kind of turned away from or practically abandoned the direction that I really wanted to go. And that insight led to a complete shift in my focus when I got back, and it inspired me to let go of certain partnerships and specific kind of work in favor of making space for a few new key clients who were really ready to transform their workplaces. But here's what's fascinating. I probably wouldn't have gotten to this insight through, careful analysis or just squeezing it in an hour here and an hour there. The breakthrough I had only happened because I was not actually thinking about work. And there's science behind this. It's very powerful because when we're in productivity mode, we're primarily operating from our prefrontal cortex. That's the planning, the doing, the executing part of our brain. But innovation and creativity come from different parts of the brain that are active when we're daydreaming and wandering and resting. And that's called the default mode network. And that's when our brain makes unexpected connections and sees patterns that we missed and generates those aha moments. And boy, do I love a good aha moment. So let me share my departure protocol. That's like the specific practices I use to ensure that I truly disconnect. Okay, because I really try to disconnect. First, it's the digital detox declaration. So you have to make it clear that you're not going to be available, right? So I usually try to set up my out of office a couple of weeks in advance saying, I'm going to be out. But in addition, I like to send an email to my key contacts, my key clients that I'm working with, and just say, hey, just as a reminder, I'll be completely offline from this date to this date, and I won't be checking email or phone. And if there's an emergency, you can send an email anyway, and my team will respond, that kind of thing. Notice, I don't say, hey, I have limited access. I say I'll be completely offline. And this sets clear expectations. It removes any ambiguity. Second, the out of office ritual is, my out of office message does not say that I'll be checking email sporadically. It says I'm unplugged and will respond after my return date. And I actually usually build in a little bit of re-entry time for when I return. Like I try not to book anything for a couple days so that I can catch up and respond to people and just check in with my team, and all that happens when I get back. And third, I leave my laptop at home. I call this the device divorce. I have to bring my phone now, because I have to navigate and translate and all the things. But I will turn off my email access and I don't check it. And finally, I think about really transitioning out of work, like the mindset reset, the mindset reset. I find the first few hours just sort of on the way to the airport and while I'm sitting in the airport waiting for the plane to leave, those are the hardest because I'm still a little bit connected. I remember things that I should have done or this or that. But once that plane takes off, my mind feels free. And after a few days, I have let go of the stresses of everyday life for sure. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Claire, this sounds great, but I could never do this in my organization. Too many people depend on me. We have too many urgent matters and too many deadlines. Or something like this, sounds good, but I only get 2 weeks vacation. And I hear you. I really do. But let me ask you this. If you are able to get away and you choose not to, or you make some excuse, what message are you sending to your team when you never truly disconnect? Is it that you don't trust them, or that they're not capable, or that it's not important to rest, or that the organization can't function without you, Because here's the truth. Organizations that can't survive without one person for a few weeks have a serious vulnerability issue. What if you got sick, or you won the lottery and retired, or you had a family emergency? The people around you have to be capable to step up and step in. Building resilience on your team starts with creating some opportunities for them to step up. Your absence can actually be a gift for their development. So I challenge you, what would it look like for you to plan, delegate, and depart, even if for a shorter time? Just remember, this isn't just about taking a vacation. It's about building sustainable leadership practice. It's about developing your team, and it's about accessing your highest creativity. Ultimately, it's also about creating a life and career that energizes you rather than depletes you. Because here's what I know for sure. None of us are meant to be on all the time. We need cycles of effort and recovery. We need space to see the bigger picture, and we need distance to gain perspective. So, off I go. I'm leaving. And I hope I have inspired you to make your next vacation plan. But before I wrap up, I wanted to just make it clear, I'm actually taking my own advice and I'm fully unplugging during this trip. And that means we'll be skipping one episode so I can recharge my creative batteries. So I apologize for that, but even with the best of planning, I can only pack so much in before I go. This might be the perfect opportunity, though, for you to catch up on any episodes you've missed. If you haven't listened to episode 5 on energizing your team, I particularly recommend that one. It pairs beautifully with this topic of rest and renewal. Remember, your ability to lead others is directly connected to how well you lead yourself. Taking time to disconnect isn't selfish. It's actually one of the most strategic leadership moves you can make. So that's it for today. If this episode helped you and inspired you to take that vacation, I hope you'll share it with another leader who might benefit. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with fresh insights in just 2 weeks. Until then, go lead the way. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about my services and for lots of free resources and additional tools to enrich your journey, visit my website and subscribe to my newsletter at clairelaughlin.com. If you have a question about leadership, teams, or organizational culture you'd like me to address on the podcast, please reach out to me at support@clairelaughlin.com and connect with me on social channels @Claire Laughlin Consulting. Until next time, lead the way.